Looks like we are live. All right, thank you everybody for joining today's presentation with the RTC. My name is Olivia Burns. I'm an environmental specialist with Clark County's Office of Sustainability. I'm going to pass it over to Nicole Wargo with the Southern Nevada Clean Cities Coalition, who will introduce our panel of speakers we have for you today. Before I pass it over, I'm going to quickly go over just a few tips to enhance your presentation experience and ways to engage using public input, which you are viewing on right now. Firstly, you can translate the entire meeting page and/or the live audio into another language. To change the language, please click the Translate button and select the language from the drop-down menu. Closed captions are also available for this presentation by clicking the CC button on the bottom right corner of the presentation page. Viewers may call in to hear audio, leave voicemail comments, or text in comments by dialing that 855 number on the registration viewing page, which is located right above the stream. Another way to interact is by putting comments or questions in the chat box next to the presentation live stream. If you think of a question anytime throughout the presentation, please put them there, and we have time to review those at the end. The presentation is being recorded and will be available on our webpage and our YouTube channel after. Lastly, if you have any difficulties viewing or hearing the presentation at any time, please refresh the meeting page or use the chat box and let us know how we could support. Now I'm going to pass it over to Nicole with Clean Cities to get us started. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Let me just share my screen. Can everyone see my slides? Okay, so my name is Nicole Wargo. I'm a fellow for Clark County's Department of Environment and Sustainability. I'm currently working on earning the region a designation into the Southern Nevada into the Clean Cities Coalition. So thank you for joining us. We're really excited to have RTC here. Just a quick overview. We're going to have Nathan Goldberg, Roger Johnson, and Deborah Reardon presenting today. And then afterwards, we're going to have a Q&A where if you leave questions in the chat, they'll answer your questions. But first, I just wanted to provide a quick Clean Cities introduction in case you haven't heard of Clean Cities. So it's a national network that's run through the U.S. Department of Energy. The main goal is to reduce petroleum fuels, and that's done through approved alternative fuels like electric vehicles, through idling reduction, or through using your public transit like RTC. So the purpose for Clean Cities is to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, provide cleaner air, and lower our greenhouse gas emissions. There are 75 coalitions in the United States. Until recently, there was no representation in Nevada, but I'm proud to say that we've earned our apprentice designation, and we're working on earning our full designation into the Clean Cities Network. So if you're interested, if you want to learn more about alternative fuels or about like presentations like this today, you can join our quarterly stakeholder meetings. Clean Cities is free and open to everyone. We should be having our next meeting in January. There's online programming like this webinar we're hosting today. We have in-person events, so we do things like electric vehicle ride and drives. You can join a working group. We are opening up an education and outreach working group soon. And then there's opportunities to support, present, and host for programs like this. So if you have any questions, if you want to learn more, you can scan this QR code or go to Clark County's All In page and find our Clean Cities web page on there. And I'm now going to turn it over to Nathan Goldberg.
Thank you for that introduction, and let me share my screen. So thank you for that. I am going to give a brief overview kind of the RTC.
Hey Nathan, can you switch your display settings for us real fast?
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, there we go. So thank you very much. I am going to give you a brief overview of the RTC and our services. At the RTC, our fundamental role is to connect people. You may know us for transit, roadways, or cycling, but we touch every cornerstone of this community, including the buses, the roads that you travel on, our traffic lights, bike lanes, and sidewalks. So what does our structure really look like? We are the transit provider for the region. We also oversee the bike share system in downtown Las Vegas, as well as other cycling initiatives. And we are the regional planning agency, otherwise known as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, where we work with all of the local jurisdictions to plan and fund roadways. We are, in addition, the traffic manager, where we coordinate traffic signals, dynamic message signs, and ramp meters for the region. The RTC is unique in that we have all of these operations under one roof, which enables us to be a much more efficient and effective kind of one-stop shop transportation agency for Southern Nevada. In our role as a community connector, we cover approximately 8,000 square miles. We have over 1,000 miles of bike facilities, 7,000 plus miles of roadways, as we move around our 45 plus million visitors and 2.3 plus million residents, numbers that seem to be ever growing. So let's take a little bit deeper view into our transit services. Our traditional bus services, as you see in green on the map, are often referred to as fixed route. And what that really means is that those are buses that operate along a defined route on a fixed schedule. This system can help you navigate throughout the valley using our 39 routes with access to jobs, shopping, restaurants, leisure activities, healthcare services, the airport, and the Strip. The fare structure for these bus routes, for these bus services, is $2 for a single ride or $5 for a 24-hour pass. We also have reduced fare options for seniors with a reduced fare ID, where you can get that for half price. There are various payment options, from cash on the bus, where you have to have your exact fare, as well as you can pay with the, using your app and scan the app on our scanners on the bus. And we are working on being able to simply tap your debit, credit card, or Apple or Android Pay as well. We also have our paratransit service area, shown in blue on the map, which is a reservation-based shared ride door-to-door program available to those who are physically or cognitively unable to utilize the fixed route system independently. You have to be eligible for this and go through an evaluation process, which you can complete at our mobility training center in order to utilize this service. It operates 24/7, 365, and operates within a 3/4 mile boundary of our fixed route services. We also have our game day express services, shown in yellow, and our on-demand service area in the southwest area. And we're going to do a little bit, we have a couple slides about each of those services, providing additional information. So for our on-demand services, we launched these in 2021 in the southwest and West Henderson portions of the valley. These areas have historically lacked quality access to transit services. And our on-demand service is a little bit more similar to an Uber or Lyft, where you can book these rides at your request via our app or by calling. And you're not forced around our fixed route schedule. You can do this, at your own leisure. They utilize a smaller vehicle as well. It's a 12-passenger bus, and these trips can be conveniently scheduled or managed through the app. They'll pick you up from your doorstep or a nearby location and connect you to transit stops and other popular destinations, such as medical facilities, grocery stores, and others within the zone. So for our Game Day Express services, if you want to get to any of our Las Vegas Raiders or Vegas Golden Knights home games, you can do that from 6 convenient locations at various casino resorts, including Red Rock, Green Valley Ranch, Santa Fe Station, Sam's Town, Aliante, and the M Resort. And those take you right to Allegiant Stadium or to T-Mobile Arena. They've been very successful due to their convenience and the fact that they are just $2 each way. You can also take game day services to UNLV football home games at Allegiant Stadium from our UNLV Transit Center. In 2022, we provided more than 130,000 rides to special events around our community, and we would encourage anyone, if you're going to a game, to give it a try. So, as you know, if you live in the Las Vegas Valley, or even for those who just visit during the summer, the extreme heat plays a major role in our lives during that summer portion of the year. Southern Nevada has one of the hottest and fastest warming climates in the United States, and the research predicts that that's only going to continue to get hotter. Our MPO's regional planning team has led efforts over the past few years to better understand urban heat in Southern Nevada and explore ways to mitigate those impacts. The first piece to that was the Southern Nevada Extreme Heat Vulnerability Analysis, which was completed in 2021. That analysis identified areas in our region with populations that were the most vulnerable to extreme heat. And since then, we have engaged in a heat mapping effort with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, conducted a heat survey with our transit riders, and are currently working on cool pavement research. So over the past year or so, we've been able to build on and advance the work of that vulnerability analysis, which was, as noted, completed in 2021. A few examples of what we are working on are heat island mapping, which you see the map on this slide. We were one of 14 locations across the United States to participate in this campaign. And through working with regional partners and volunteers, we were able to capture temperature data that it basically revealed which neighborhoods in the valley are the hottest. We also conducted a public transit survey related to extreme heat and received more than 1,600 responses from our transit riders related to their experiences riding transit during the summer and the impacts of extreme heat on their commutes. And we are currently analyzing those results. Also, in terms of cool pavement, there's been a lot of growing interest from local leaders and stakeholders about cool pavement. And we are exploring whether or not a pilot program is worth pursuing, and are talking to the city of Phoenix, Arizona, as well as Arizona State University, who are at the forefront of cool pavement deployment and research. One of the things that we have implemented recently regarding extreme heat is the slimline bus shelter. This is a new shelter design. And its intention is really to help provide some relief from the sun and provide some shade in areas where we otherwise would not be able to do so. Many of our sidewalks have a block wall directly adjacent to the back of the sidewalk or some other obstruction, whether that be a building or other infrastructure. And therefore, a regular transit shelter just simply cannot be deployed in those locations. So we were able to come up with a design that offered the ability to provide some relief from the sun, as well as a place to lean. It doesn't offer a place to sit, but it does, it provides some relief where otherwise there wouldn't be any. We have been able to deploy these so far in a handful of locations throughout the valley, and are analyzing all of the potential locations where these could be utilized. And we're really hopeful that there are hundreds, if not more, locations where this could be utilized as a win to provide our transit riders with a better experience. So that is a kind of a general overview of who we are and what we have been working on in an overall context. And I hope that you've learned some of what we're doing behind the scenes in terms of making Southern Nevada a better place. So With that, I will turn it over to Roger.
Thank you, Nathan. Great information you shared there. Let me share my screen. Is my I'm good in presentation mode here.
Yep, looks good. Thank you.
Sorry. Minimize this. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for bearing with me as I transition my screen there. So my name is Roger Johnson. I'm the manager of zero emissions fleet technology for the RTC of Southern Nevada. I've been with the RTC for about 10 years now. My background is primarily in maintenance, and some of my roles include bus procurements and supporting infrastructure projects related to our fleets. Some of my current projects include placing in service our first zero emission buses, and I'll share this brief presentation of our progress up to this point. A little bit of information about our current fleet. We have approximately 445 fixed route vehicles and 430 paratransit vehicles. For those not aware, as Nathan mentioned previously, the fixed route vehicles are the large city buses that operate along predetermined routes and stops. And the paratransit vehicles are the smaller cutaway vehicles that support the reservation-based service to our less abled community. Currently, the fleet is comprised of almost 90% compressed natural gas. Natural gas has been cleaner, cost-effective, and more quiet than its competitor diesel fuel. And we started transitioning well over 20 years ago. And since then, we've had the benefits that include the ability to fuel our buses in 15 minutes or less. And that supports our demanding operational needs. And we can operate upwards of 350 miles. And these buses and technology perform really well in the heat. As we continue our efforts to improve our air quality and increase our sustainability, we developed a zero emissions bus rollout plan in 2020. This plan identifies a pathway for us to become 100% zero emissions by the year 2050 as funding allows. So we're starting our transition with the introduction of 2 40-foot hydrogen fuel cell buses and 4 battery electric buses. We're evaluating both of these zero emission technologies in our fleet for the consideration of their flexibility and resiliency and their performance so that we can better understand the best path forward that will meet our operational needs. You heard me mention that both battery electric and the hydrogen fuel cell are zero emission vehicles, and I'll briefly explain the difference. So the battery electric bus, as it implies, is a bus that uses an onboard battery pack to store energy that will be used to make a traction motor turn the drive wheels. There's a lot of ancillary components to make it all work, but in general, it's very much like a Tesla. You plug the charger into the bus, and when the charge is complete, you disconnect, and then you're free to drive until the batteries run low on power. At that point, you would have to return to a charger and plug in until it's charged sufficiently to operate again. As another option, hydrogen fuel cell electric buses are also zero emissions. So the fuel cell bus would be almost identical to the battery electric bus, even including the battery storage on board. But the main difference, as highlighted in blue on the left image, would include special tanks to store the hydrogen fuel and then the fuel cell itself. And while I'm no scientist, I did want to try and explain the fuel cell operation shown to the right a little bit and in a way that hopefully makes a little bit of sense. And so in this version of a bus, instead of plugging in to recharge the batteries, you would add hydrogen gas to on board to the storage tanks. So this gas would be plumbed from the tanks down to the fuel cell module. And that fuel cell module has got a membrane inside of it. And so you can envision this membrane kind of like a strainer or a sponge. This membrane starts a chemical process that breaks the hydrogen down into protons and electrons. So the electrons, which are essentially electricity, can't pass through that membrane, and instead they're routed to the battery to charge it. And then the protons, they are able to pass through this membrane, and then they're combined on the other side of the fuel cell with incoming oxygen, and that creates H2O. So basically, the hydrogen fuel cell is just an onboard battery charger that allows you to extend the range of the bus, and the only byproduct is water. And so when this bus runs low on energy, you would return to the fuel station and add more hydrogen versus plugging into a charger like the previous battery electric bus. This is our first hydrogen bus. For this project, we work with industry partners, New Flyer, who are the bus manufacturer, Ballard Power Systems, who manufacture the fuel cell, and we applied and were awarded a low no emissions grant in 2020. And that included the purchase of the 240-foot hydrogen buses, and it also included funding to design and construct a liquid hydrogen fuel station. Now, the design and construction of the fuel station takes a little bit longer than it does to build the bus. And because of that timing difference, we needed a solution to support the buses as they arrived. And the gap solution was a temporary supply of gas, hydrogen, fuel, and dispensing. So the buses have been in service since June of this year, and they've been performing as expected. Each of these buses can hold 37.5 kilograms of hydrogen, and the efficiency has been an average of about 7.5 miles per kilogram, which gives our expected range of about 225 to 250 miles with these buses. This is what our temporary solution of hydrogen gas fuel station looks like. The reason a solution like this can be implemented quickly is because the fuel supply is in a gas form and it's not a liquid form. That reduces the amount of equipment that's needed to dispense. And because it's a simple design and it's all self-contained, that means the permitting process is much more simple and it's quick. And so basically what you're looking at that we consider the fuel station are the two white trailers surrounded by the barriers. You can see our bus pulled up next to the trailer on the left. And from this position, we can attach the fuel dispensing hose from the trailer to the bus and initiate a transaction. So with this equipment, a fuel transaction takes up to about 40 minutes. But as we construct our permanent station, we'll be using some different equipment that can fuel in 15 minutes or less, which is very similar to our CNG experience. Another challenging part with this configuration is that hydrogen gas is not as dense as hydrogen liquid, and so it requires much more volume of storage. But having said that, this is a viable solution, especially for providing service in gaps of the construction process, or if somebody's looking to support smaller projects that wouldn't require fueling large quantities of buses in short periods of time. In addition to the hydrogen and electric buses, we've also purchased 4 40-foot battery electric buses that are manufactured by New Flyer. We just put these in service starting in this November, actually. So these buses are equipped with 520 kilowatt hour battery packs, and with an efficiency estimation of about 2.5 kilowatt hours per mile, we anticipate seeing an average range of about 160 to maybe 180 miles. So we're looking forward to digging into the details of their performance so that we can make comparisons to the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. To support the charging of the battery electric buses, we installed 150 kilowatt depot chargers that are manufactured by a company called ABB. These chargers are considered a level 3 DC fast charger, and they're capable of charging at a rate of up to 300 amps. That would take about 3.5 hours to charge a bus if the bus was almost empty. It's been a priority of ours to ensure our operators, technicians, fuelers, and first responders are all properly trained. So before the buses arrived, we started basic familiarization training. And then as buses show up, we continued with more detailed technical training. This includes subjects like high voltage safety, personal protective equipment for technicians, vehicle operations for the drivers, charging and fueling process for the support staff, and even emergency response procedures for the fire departments. And so now that we've gone through some of the training and we have multiple zero emission technologies in service, it's time for us to start carefully monitoring their performance and to evaluate their trends, their costs, and efficiencies. So these buses are equipped with data recorders, and we're able to generate reports through the telematics system. So we'll be studying these reports to evaluate the benefits of each of the technologies. And I don't know if it shows up because it's kind of a small print, but just as an example, in this telematic report, I can see that this particular bus 22601 on June 20th drove for approximately 78 miles, and it was getting 7 miles per kilogram. And with that, it was 89 degrees out. And so in that operating profile, we could have went up to 240 miles or so. So you can see how these will be valuable in our research phase. For a brief look forward, we're continuing with the construction of our liquid hydrogen station that's going to support up to 15 buses. That should be completed in 2024. And we have 7 60-foot hydrogen buses on order with New Flyer. Those should deliver in the fourth quarter of 2024. And we're also continuing to evaluate the energy requirements that would be needed to support additional battery electric buses in our fleet. And so that's all I had prepared to share, and look forward to any questions that you might have here in the future. And with that, I'll stop sharing and pass it along to Deb.
Hi, Roger, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deb Reardon, Regional Planning Manager here at the RTC, and I'm going to be sharing an overview of our work at the Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Looks good, Deb.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Olivia. So in addition to sharing a bit about our work at the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is one of our other functions here at the RTC, I will also share a few examples of how we're really working to achieve the Clean Cities goals of reducing overall petroleum use through planning. So first, what is an MPO? Well, a Metropolitan Planning Organization is actually a federal designation. The Highway Act that occurred in 1962 required that any community over 50,000 people must create an MPO, really to ensure that our regional transportation planning process is done through the 3C process. That means continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive. And the RTC has really served in this role as the MPO in Southern Nevada since 1981. We serve actually all of Clark County, including outlying communities like Mesquite, also Boulder City. So why even have an MPO? First and foremost is that an MPO is really a requirement to obtain any federal transportation dollars. That includes all of the roadway projects you see built by NDOT, local agencies. They are all, many of them are federally funded, and those funds are programmed by us here at the MPO. Through that process, we as a community select the projects that receive those federal funds. This is completed through the regional transportation plan process that occurs every 4 years. Through that plan, we have as a community an opportunity to prioritize sustainable transportation projects that have the potential to reduce emissions. MPOs are also looked upon to convene a wide range of stakeholders and community members. That goes to that cooperative piece of our 3C process, really working with the community to develop a transportation system that serves the needs of all. And finally, recent federal legislation, it actually expanded our role quite a bit and to look at those interconnectedness between transportation and other things like housing, economic development, as well as climate change. So for example, we're beginning to plan for the region's transition to electric vehicles. So really in coordination with a few partners to get started, NV Energy, Clark County, we're looking at improving charging access for underserved communities. This heat map that you see shows the Las Vegas Valley, and the greatest concentrations of EV charging are really showing up at the resort corridor, downtown, and generally along the 215. The gray areas in the map show our equity priority areas that we've identified by a series of factors related to public health, transportation, and socioeconomics. And so by comparing the two, we see that there's an apparent gap in the availability of charging infrastructure in those underserved communities. And this initial infrastructure plan is intended to really address that gap. If adopted on a widespread basis, we know that EVs have a big potential to decrease greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. This graphic is from the pathways analysis completed by the Clark County All-In Plan. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the GHG emissions measured in million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And like Roger, I'm also not a scientist, and we'll take a shot at this. And so we know that our goal over here in the bottom right-hand corner is to reach zero, or net zero rather, by 2050. And so if we take no action, right now we're around 30. And so that will continue to increase over here to 35. And so by adopting EVs, there's the potential to really drop that down quite a bit. However, we still see that there's this gap. And so that gap is where we're really focusing our efforts in planning to get people out of cars, reduce driving overall in a way to really reduce those other emissions. And so one of those ways we're doing that is through our bike share program. The RTC's actually operated bike share since 2016. That system is really focused down in downtown Las Vegas. It includes 25 stations, and we've recently expanded to include another set of stations at the medical district, with future expansion envisioned really heading east and then also along Maryland Parkway. Those expansions will include both additional bikes as well as more stations. In addition to bike share downtown, we really help to work with the regional partners to plan roads where people can more easily walk, bike, and roll. For example, we developed the Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan back in 2017 that we hope is really used as a roadmap to create a more bikeable network to increase both comfort and safety for all. And again, through that regional transportation plan, we also have the ability to program funds, really aligning our policy goals with our funding that's available in support of complete streets projects, such as more bike lanes, more trails, bike paths, and wider sidewalks, to name a couple of examples. So, but to shift modes and really get people out of cars, there's really a need to look even more broadly. And we do this through the Southern Nevada Strong Regional Plan. This serves as our aspirational blueprint for land use and transportation coordination. And it was really the first plan of its region when it was developed back in 2012. It includes many goals and specific strategies to make our region more sustainable on a couple levels, economically, environmentally, as well as socially sustainable. And really, again, focusing on that more intentional coordination between land use, transportation, and economic development. It really provides a forum to talk about how we grow. We know that our population includes 2 million people now and is expected to reach 3 million. So where will those people live, work, how will they get around is really what Southern Nevada Strong is focused on. And so after the plan was adopted by all local governments in 2015, the RTC, in our already federally funded regional planning role here at the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we were asked to take on the role of plan administrator. And so we've been doing that for the last almost decade. The plan really set forth 4 primary goals or themes to achieve the vision of a more sustainable future. These include increasing economic competitiveness and education, investing in more complete communities, increasing transportation choice, and then also really working to build our community capacity and success in implementation. These broad goals, and there are many strategies we won't go through today, over 300 actually, were identified through really robust community engagement. It reached over 70,000 residents at the time, and it's really been continued on through a steering committee that helps to facilitate as well as implement this project. So this future vision of a more sustainable future is illustrated on this more conceptual map. The circles show downtowns and more walkable places where jobs and housing are near transit, and there's a lot more reinvestment in our existing communities. This type of vision at the time was looking at really decreasing our land consumption, really reducing that distance between jobs and housing, increasing the transportation choices and decreasing transportation costs, also reducing overall public infrastructure costs by really taking advantage of the infrastructure that we've already built. And also, most importantly for this group at Clean Cities, also reducing emissions and overall petroleum use. And so we've seen since plan adoption some successes in implementation. We know there's a lot more investment in our downtowns, more bike lanes, wider sidewalks, and the corridors, especially Maryland Parkway, have also seen some new redevelopment. But however, despite these efforts, there really continues to be a bit of a disconnect between how we want to grow, which is shown on the left, and the future anticipated growth, which is shown on the right, which is really showing a lot more development on the urban edge. So these large separations between land use, creating more bedroom communities and separation between jobs and housing is expected to continue without more intervention. This is especially problematic given our limited funding and constraints on natural resources that are even more prevalent today, especially as it relates to land and water, excuse me. And of interest to Clean Cities, this pattern of development is also expected to increase driving. We anticipate that our increased vehicle miles traveled would increase by about 38%. And so to address these challenges, our Southern Nevada Strong Steering Committee asked us to really take a fresh look and update the regional plan. We've kicked off that process in the last 4 or 5 months, connecting with over 500 or so individuals and groups through one-on-one interviews. We did a housing roundtable, industry focus groups, presentations, community listening sessions. We're really just starting to get moving. And this outreach identified a few critical needs that we are planning to address through this update. First, the plan will include an inventory of vacant and underutilized land that can support redevelopment. Things that you might see like empty parking lots or decaying commercial centers. And so we're hoping that availability of that data set will provide a complete picture of those economic development opportunities across the valley. Next, we'll use that inventory really as a foundation to imagine how a different arrangement of homes, jobs, and public facilities could occur to support our growing population. And so that could look at a lot of different ways, some combination of investment in existing neighborhoods, maybe some continued growth on the fringe or even beyond, or some combination of all three. These arrangements will be tested through a planning tool called scenario planning that will really allow us to evaluate trade-offs of those choices. These types of choices and different arrangements of development really have the potential to increase or lower our emissions, lower transit and infrastructure costs, provide either more or less water that people use, and then also has a big impact on our overall housing affordability and supply. So we really hope that this new visioning process will result in a new shared vision for growth and also an action plan to get there. So thank you so much for your attention today. We really appreciate your interest in RTC and also your advocacy to make Southern Nevada an even stronger and more sustainable place to live. And I'm going to turn it back over to Nicole and Olivia for our Q&A.
Thank you again for the entire team over at RTC who presented here today. Let me just bring up my slides again. All right. Yeah, we definitely appreciate everyone coming on, Deb and Nathan and Roger, for sharing your expertise and insights all about transportation options here in Clark County. Now, before we get to questions, it's a good time to ask more while I go over our education program for you, because we have a lot of exciting questions in the chat. So if you think of any more, go ahead and put them there. If you enjoyed today's presentation, we do a lot more. We have a lot more opportunities to learn more about sustainability or get involved here with All in Clark County. You can register for events, sign up for our newsletter to receive updates, or check out other resources we have by visiting our website, which is right there, allinclarkcounty.com. If you go to that /involvement/education program, you could register for more events like this. On the slide, you could see a few photos of the different in-person events we've hosted or attended this year. We had Drive Electric Week, where attendees had the opportunity to test drive electric vehicles and e-bikes. We also had a cleanup at Lake Mead earlier in the spring. We toured a few of the different recycling facilities to learn about how we can properly recycle here at our homes. But you could also join us in on the fun starting for the new year by going to that link on our website. There's the QR code to stay updated through all of the All-In initiatives. We have, of course, the Clean Cities Coalition, which is the focus of today's topic. You could also stay updated with us by following us at Sustain Clark County. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our YouTube channel also has all the recorded webinars that we've done in the past. So if you're interested in checking those out, you can visit our YouTube channel. But now it looks like I will go over the questions. So I'm just going to ask the questions broadly to the presenters, and then whoever is best suited to answer will. But it looks like this first one is actually for Nathan. Is transit on demand service only for mobility impaired?
No, transit on demand can be for anyone. Anyone, as long as you stay within that zone, anyone can use it at any time.
Great, thank you. All right, next question is, how is RTC using the heat data to help vulnerable communities?
I will just think from my perspective, I know that they're focusing on different shade structures through different kinds of bus stops and being selective about the locations, about where they're placing those new shelters that offer the most shade. And I'm not sure if Nathan or Deb have got additional insight to it, but that's what I'm aware of from.
Yeah, correct. And when, for example, when we're looking at places for transit, to say to add frequency to routes or to make enhancements to service, certainly looking at these areas and where there may be deficiencies that need to be addressed. I think the same holds true of our other planning processes.
Yeah, there's also a grant that was received that will develop new climate adaptive bus shelter designs that will be initially deployed in a neighborhood that was identified as most vulnerable on the heat index map. And then there's potential for that design to be rolled out even further.
Thanks for expanding on that. Next question is, does RTC own the roads? It looks like it was talking about cool pavement and if it could be implemented if RTC owns or does not own the roads.
We don't actually own the right of way. That's owned by the respective jurisdiction, whether that be any of the locals or NDOT. So we're kind of the funding mechanism through which federal money flows to the local jurisdictions. So that's the role that we play in that. But certainly, certainly we're working kind of we're working in that space to make sure that everything as far as federal guidelines and whatnot is is followed when projects are completed.
Thank you. Another urban heat related question. Is RTC looking into planting trees near bus stops or along routes to get to the bus?
So I'll say we don't actually plant the trees typically. That's the local jurisdictions or HOAs and whatnot that do that. We also have to be cautious of how we do that. If they're too close to the bus shelters, they actually block. So the bus shelters are powered by solar, which is on the top of the roof of the bus shelter. So we don't want to obstruct the solar panels from being able to provide the power for that bus shelter. And then we also need to make sure that when we do plant trees adjacent to the roadway, that they're of the appropriate type of tree and size of tree, that they don't actually physically impact the bus. We tend to get a lot of, well, Roger can speak to that better than I can, but there's a lot of mirror or side damage with certain trees. So we do a lot of tree trimming.
Thank you. All right, next question. Are there any future plans to make some of the bus shelter areas for passengers better constructed for sitting and shelter against high winds besides the slimmer bus shelters?
We are looking at shelter design currently from a variety of aspects. Kind of we have our standard shelter design, which are kind of the wavy blue roof ones that you see out there. There are some older grandfathered shelters throughout the valley as well, kind of the brown ones that you see that are older. We're working on replacing those over time. The slim lines are, like I said, they're intended for a specific purpose where there is not right of way to put anything more than that. I would say look for more to come, specifically along the Maryland Parkway corridor. That there's a larger project coming there in the near future, and that's going to include some higher level shelter design, as well as the Henderson portion of Boulder Highway. We have money to, there was a grant received to do a larger center running project along that portion of Boulder Highway, and that will include some enhanced stations as well. So we're looking at a combination of shade, safety, and comfort. So there's always a lot to consider when it comes to bus shelter design and the way that they function, and then also having them be kind of not unique, so that we can deploy them in multiple places and they're not kind of a one-off from a maintenance perspective.
Thanks, Nathan. All right, next question is, what is RTC planning to do to address the sharp increase in pedestrian bicycle fatalities on our roadways besides education and enforcement?
I can say from a technology standpoint, we're researching technology that can be adopted onto the bus to increase visibility and blind spot detections. So pedestrian inclusion avoidance, forward-looking cameras, blind spot looking cameras, visual audible alerts for the operators to be aware, and things like that from a technology on the bus perspective.
Yeah, we also at the MPO received a federal Safe Streets for All planning grant to look at those high crash corridors and intersections, and then develop some interventions and some preliminary designs to address some of those locations. So if anyone's interested in participating, we can get your contact information. I can pass it along to my colleagues who are going to lead that effort.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks, Deb. We have a question about compressed natural gas, and is it considered a clean fuel? Maybe Nicole, do you want to chime in about Clean Cities fuels?
Yeah, so for Clean Cities Coalition, again, it's run through the US Department of Energy. And they have 7 approved alternative fuels to replace petroleum, and compressed natural gas is one of those fuels. We, however, at Clark County, we do try to promote electric vehicles, but any of those 7 alternative fuels are considered a clean fuel by the DOE and works towards our goals for clean cities.
Great, thank you. We do have about 8 minutes left of the webinar. We still have quite a few questions to get through. So just letting the audience know. All right, the next question we have is, how far along is RTC on their zero emission by 2050 path? Where do you stand now at the end of 2023? And what are your immediate goals for the new year?
I would say we're kind of in our infancy still. You know, we've got a fleet of almost 900 vehicles, and we have 6 in service that are zero emission right now. So, you know, we have to approach this thoughtfully. We got to make sure that it's working for the end use of serving the public and transporting passengers. So it's right now comparing the technologies is our goal, see how efficient they are compared to each other. And we do have a roadmap that still gets us to 2050, 100% zero emissions by then. So I think we'll focus the next year or two making those comparisons, evaluating the technology, and slowly making purchases still of the technology to increase our fleet to move ourselves along in the plan.
Thanks, Roger. Are these new technologies adding more local new jobs? And then another question is RTC hiring?
I'm trying to think of how to answer that. So like right now, the technology is being trained to our existing workforce, but there's always a need for additional workforce. It's something that the transit industry has struggled with. And so there will be opportunity for a new headcount, new technicians, new training, whether it's fueling staff, you know, research and development, mechanics, or whatever it may be. I'm sure there's going to be opportunities in there, but right now it seems like the majority is just training current staff.
Thank you.
And I'll say, yes, we are hiring, and I'll put in a plug too. Our contractors are hiring as well. So meaning, you know, if Transdev is our transit service provider, and you know, the bulk of the drivers and mechanics and things are not actually RTC, so that those jobs are through the contractors. But yes, those are certainly things that are out there and available.
Thank you, guys. About how long in years will the lithium batteries and electric buses last before they have to be replaced?
So the bus is required to be operable for its life cycle, which is 12 years. This specific, every manufacturer is slightly different, but our current manufacturer has a warranty of the battery for up to 6 years. And we expect that a portion of the fleet probably could last the entire life of the bus. But the warrantable portion of the battery is 6 years. So there is the potential that sometime between year 6 and year 12 that we would have to replace one if it degrades to the point where we can't support operating on our route profiles, then we would have to replace the battery. But that will be kind of something that we're closely monitoring the degradation over years to see at what point can we project if we do need to replace batteries, when would that be?
Appreciate it. Thank you all for answering all these questions. The next one is, what traffic management can be expected for large events such as the Super Bowl, and what lessons did you learn from the Formula One race?
I'll say we're still debriefing on some of the Formula One lessons. Kind of without speaking out of turn, I'll say the construction leading up to was probably worse than the event itself, in terms of some of the impacts that we're seeing. But certainly Certainly the collaboration and the partnerships that went into Formula One will carry over into the Super Bowl. So working very closely with our own FAST division, which is our traffic management division, with all of the various police and emergency service personnel that go into kind of the behind the scenes traffic control on that. The airport plays a large role in that, the monorail. We basically all were working together in kind of a large command center and trying to coordinate on everything as best as possible and keep everyone moving as much as we can. So that will certainly continue into the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is a little bit different in the way it's set up versus Formula One kind of created a large bubble inside the track. Which happened to include about a third of the resorts on the strip and the 20,000+ employees that were inside of that. So the Super Bowl won't have that necessarily, but it does create its own, I'll say, kind of creates its own vacuum around Allegiant Stadium with the security barrier that is going to be around it. So we'll have to. There will certainly be impacts. It'll just be a different sort, but all of those relationships and that communication is in place.
Thank you, Nathan. Deb, when you were presenting, you talked about the emissions reductions and there was a gap, and that was to get people out of their cars. This question is geared towards how is RTC helping their internal staff to get out of their personal cars? Do you have any employee engagement programs?
Yes, the MPO actually funds the Club Ride program, which is our travel demand management program that does carpool matching, encourages employers to telework, goes out on site to, share how to use transit. And so those are just a couple of the ways that the Club Ride program is working in those areas.
Thank you. I just have 4 more questions from the chat. This is geared towards all the presenters. How many times per week do you utilize RTC's fixed route transit? If it's less than 1 time a day, what are some barriers you face to use it more?
Yeah, I'll go. For me, it is less than 1 time a day, and I think it's the duration of the trip. So I think some of the services that Nathan described as far as increasing frequency, to really shorten those trip durations, I think would help get more people out of cars. Before I moved to Las Vegas, I did not own a car. I lived on the East Coast where it was really easy to walk, to pick up my groceries and go to school and all of those things. And so I think the distances between the destinations is also makes it tough.
Yep. I would add, I'm not a frequent user that I could say I ride daily. I did recently purchase an e-bike and looking to find a way that I can commute to a stop that would be convenient enough to get to work. I did realize after I bought the bike that the bike rack actually won't fit the tire. My tire is so fat on the e-bike that we need a wider tray. So that's something that we're looking into as well. But try to use it for special use cases, if I have somewhere specific that is convenient, getting to the airport and things of that, but definitely something to work towards.
Yeah, and I'll say similar. I try to ride from here to lunch or things like that, and utilize it when you basically utilize it when possible. As Deb alluded to, it really is the travel time, and not being competitive with a car is the barrier to that. And that's something that we are working on chipping away at year after year, at getting better and better at making transit more competitive. I'll say it's not a unique problem to the RTC. It's more of an American transit problem outside of a couple major metroplexes and that eastern seaboard that make that more difficult. But that is certainly the goal that we are pursuing, is to make transit faster and more convenient.
Thank you for sharing your guys' experiences. Like I said, just a few more questions before we end the presentation for today. How much regional climate impact will the RTC's zero tailpipe emission vehicle program have versus increasing ridership on RTC buses? Some examples is purchasing more conventional vehicles to reduce headway.
So I couldn't speak to like vehicle purchases to reducing headway, but some of the trends and KPIs that we'll be monitoring are the reduction of the carbon emission and that's just going to be based on how many miles the vehicles are traveling throughout the year. So those would be some of the KPIs that we're actually monitoring, but right now you can only project on what like the Department of Energy would state that one transit bus on average would replace 230,000 pounds of carbon. But those are just kind of general projections. So definitely something that we'll be trending and looking to answer in the future.
Thank you. Is there a light rail coming along Maryland Parkway, UNLV to the Med Center?
Maryland Parkway is currently slated to be a bus rapid transit project. It was determined to not be light rail. I want to say probably about 2 years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then last question is, are there any future demonstration projects on using solar to create hydrogen?
Not here in Las Vegas, no. I know there's some transit agencies across the nation. They're installing solar farms to create the energy that will be used to create their hydrogen. So that's in Illinois, I believe. The transit agency is doing that, Champaign-Urbana, but not here locally, no.
Great. Well, thank you all for answering all those questions, and thank you for the audience for asking all of them and engaging in today's presentation. Really special thank you to the RTC team for coming on and sharing all things transportation with everybody. So again, thank you all, and this is the end of the presentation to get to know RTC.